Significant.
Significant. Welcome to Significant Life, the podcast for women who want to live, lead, and serve from an anchored place. I'm your host, Janice Anderson, wife, mother of three, CEO, and lover of all things Jesus. I firmly believe that strong women need an even stronger support system. So whether you need to get it done or come undone, this is a place where you can do it all without second guessing who you are, disconnecting from those you love, or undervaluing your irreplaceable contribution to the world. Regardless of what you're facing, this I know for sure. You were created to live and enjoy a significant life. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of Significant Life Podcast. I am your host, Janice Anderson. And girl, I am so excited to be coming to you today. We are 1 week past Christmas, and I just want to check in. How are you? How is your heart? How is your soul? How is your body? Girl, how are you feeling? What was the time like for you? Whether it was filled with celebration and gifts and you got what you wanted or gave what you wanted to give, or if it was just peaceful and quiet, and you kind of just relax, Netflix and chilled a bit. I want to know, how are you today? You know, and maybe it was something else. Maybe it wasn't all that you thought it would be. And you're still recovering and rebounding from that. That's okay too. I'm still checking in. I want to know, how's your heart? I was excited as I got ready to record this episode because I wished I had this type of podcast as I was navigating the earlier years of my life when big days came. So whenever there was a big day, I would be filled with such excitement and all of this energy thrust into the big day, into the moment, into making it such an experience, only to afterwards be utterly depleted, but not able to sit in that depletion because, hello, the next thing was upon me. You know what it's like. Okay, you got the vacation, you need a vacation from the vacation because all of the planning for the vacation, then you have the actual vacation, the trip back from the vacation, managing all the personalities, attitudes, finances, all the things, only to jump back into a project, schoolwork, housework. Like, OMG, you know, where is my buffer? Where is my margin? I remember when I realized that way of life was not going to work for me. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because I want to offer you what I didn't have in the earlier years of my life as a mom, and my life as an entrepreneur. I had to stumble upon this. And so I want to offer to you this gift of buffer time, this gift of building in margin into your life, the gift of, girl, don't you rush into the next thing. Okay, so let me tell you what I mean. So one of the practices that I stumbled upon, but not for real, was intentional on, is this idea of having buffer time in my schedule. I developed this habit as a single mom. At the time, I had two girls. My older two were a toddler and an adolescent. I was building my business, trying to make ends meet, and I had those two. And what I would do is, you know, serve my clients during the day, you know, and although the work I do is knowledge work, you know, it's work where I use my brain. It's thought work. You know, I strategize from within. I get to, you know, speak and things like that. But it's not always manual labor. Y'all, thought work is real work. Can I say that again for the people in the back? Thought work is real work, which means that it requires real effort, real energy, time. Like I can be exhausted after thought work. And so I would do my work in the daytime, then rush to pick my adolescent daughter up from the bus so we can rush and get the toddler from preschool so I can rush and feed the girls, smile with them, and then have one last client call, one last coaching call, one last Q&A before the night was over. And then high off of the Q&A, high off of the client call, high off of whatever the experience was before I dove back into life with the girls, I would be excited, get into life with them right before bedtime or the next thing. And y'all, I would crash. Homegirl would be exhausted. And over time, after doing that, my mind had gotten used to the rhythm and I can anticipate the exhaustion. And can I tell you what happened? I started resenting the time with the girls. I started feeling like, you know what? They are an interruption and an inconvenience. Only on the days when I had to work with clients. But I did. I know you're probably listening like, Janice, I can't believe you're saying your kids, you are saying your children were an interruption and an inconvenience. Yes. I'm being honest because some mother out there is feeling that way. And I hated feeling like that. I felt so guilty and ashamed of myself for feeling that way. And those were my true feelings. And I knew that the only person who could change that was me. My kids were doing what kids do. They were growing at the pace of children. They were being just like kids were supposed to be. They were loving their mom, wanting to spend time with her. There was nothing wrong with their behavior. My clients were doing like clients do when you have someone that's good and reliable. They're calling on me. They're expecting things from me. They're longing to hear from me or bringing their projects to me. Hello. That's what we want our clients to do. The issue was me. It was me. I hadn't established a rhythm of life that would work for me. I didn't establish a rule for my life or a system of how it's going to operate that would give me time to buffer and to breathe in between things. So I was going from one thing to the next thing. When I was working in corporate, I would come home from work, pick my daughter up from school and go straight into the house, into cooking and making things happen. Like there was no room. At least when I was in corporate, I had an hour drive so I can kind of wind down on the drive before I got to the daycare to pick up my daughter. But when I was as an entrepreneur, all the things were right there. There was no drive to buffer. It was just me. I read this quote and I was like, you know what? This describes pretty much us, pretty much me. And this quote is out of John Ortberg's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, a very good book. I'm on my third read of it. But one of the things he said, he quotes this article from Ann Peterson who says, burnout isn't a place to visit and come back from. It's a permanent residence. Like we live in what used to be an isolated experience for people who worked on Wall Street or for emergency room doctors. Now, this is literally our way of life. Like we live at this rapid pace, going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. Think about your timeline and how is it scroll, scroll, scroll. There's an endless feed. There is not a stopping point. It is crazy. This world, this culture, this time is designed to keep you on this ever running wheel with no breaks, no pauses, no breathing room. And just because the culture is designed like that doesn't mean that you have to give way to that or that you have to succumb to it and build your whole life to exist like that. So as we're coming off of this holiday, I just want to caution you not to rush into the next thing, to build into your life breathing room, buffer time. As I was preparing for this podcast, I was sharing with my husband, the day that I'm recording this is a few days before our anniversary. When you hear this, we would have celebrated our anniversary. And I was like, hey, honey, I could tell he's off from work. He's taking some days off because he's doing a lot of things around the house. And he is nonstop trying to get this stuff done, like back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And I was just like raising my hand, like, hello. She's like, yes. He pointed at me. I had my hand raised as if I was a student in class. And he pointed at me like he was a teacher. Yes, how may I help you? And I was like, hello, do you know you have a wife? You have a wife who's going to want to hang out with you in a couple of days. And I want to do something fun. And I don't want you to be exhausted. And because I love you, I can recognize whether you say you're tired or not. I can recognize when you don't have enough energy, when you're tired, when you need a break. And I'm going to give that to you, but I really would like to hang out with you. So can you kind of ease up a bit? And he looked at me, he smiled a little bit, and he was just like, well, we got 2 days before our anniversary. I got a couple of days and I just got to do it. He started rambling things off on his list. And then I read to him this definition that I want to read to you. In his book, Margin, Restoring Emotional, Physical, Financial, and Time Reserves to the Overloaded Lives, Richard Swenson writes this: margin is the space between our load and our limits. It is the amount allowed between that which is needed it is the amount allowed between that which is needed. That's right. It is something held in for reserve, for contingencies, for unanticipated situations. Margin is the gap between rest and exhaustion. It's the space between breathing freely and suffocating. Margin is the opposite of overload. If we're overloaded, we have no margin. And most people are not even aware when they go from margin to overload. And most people are not aware when they go from margin to overload. Threshold points are not easily measured and are also different for different people and different circumstances. And many of us, we don't want to be underachievers, God forbid, so we fill our schedules uncritically. Options are so attractive as they are numerous, and we overbook ourselves over and over again. And I want to warn you, I want to caution you, girl, I want to encourage you. Don't do that. You do not have to be overbooked. Just because you have a day to breathe, doesn't mean you have to fill it up with more stuff. And so as you enter into this next phase, I wanted to just share with you a few tips to help you to re-enter gracefully rather than rushing on to the next thing. Can we say that? I'm going to re-enter gracefully. One of the things I had to realize when I was that single mom, feeling like my children were an inconvenience and an interruption, I had to get clear on what my re-entry would look like. That might mean I'm going to have to stop my day a little bit earlier so that I can have a buffer between when I picked up the girls and when I came back home. I do that even now, even though I have my husband here and I am in much more control of my schedule. I stop meetings at a certain time so that I can ease into the next. I am very clear that, you know what? I know what happens to me. And that's what I want you to get clear on. What happens to you when you go from one thing to the next thing? What happens to you? Now, not what you want to happen, not what you think should happen, not how you're just piling on the expectations that others have of you, but really happens when you go from one project to the next project without a buffer in between, from one holiday into business planning without a buffer in between, from one big day into the next major thing without a buffer in between. What happens? As I'm thinking about this and my mind is reflecting on that, I can tell you one visceral reaction I have is my shoulders tense up. When I have too much on my plate, the thought of it causes me to tense up. And so then I feel my shoulders tense. I pause. I breathe a bit and I start looking to find, what is that? Why is this happening? As I'm recording this podcast, I know it's because, I got to remember I need to pick up the baby. And that in and of itself is no issue. But I also have a call that I want to be on and I want to be seated and present for. And so the call, me being seated and present for it, picking up the baby, they are all coinciding because it's raining here in Atlanta. Hello, in Atlanta, when it rains, it's chaotic on the streets because we act like rain and snow. Don't worry about it. And so if I'm not careful, if I don't build in buffer, if I don't build in time, then I will be tense. And so then I'll get the baby and I'll either be frustrated with her or I'll be frustrated on the call or I'll drive in a way that is not as safe as it needs to be, all because rather than easing into the next thing, I rush into it. So let's talk about 3 things that we can do to make sure we re-enter our normal lives after this busy season, after this big day with grace and ease, rather than rushing into it and causing a disruption and maybe even a destruction that's going to be difficult to recover from. Number one, I want you to realize that you can set the rhythm of your life. Let me say that again. You can establish the rhythm for your life. Like, I need you to know that you get to do that. Why am I saying that? It sounds so simple, but when we think that we have no control over our rhythm or how we flow or what we need and what we think, then we literally surrender to the pressures and demands of the life around us. But when I stop and I know that I'm in control of these rhythms, that even though these demands are here, I can control how I respond to them, if I'm going to respond to them, and how I'm going to allow them to impact me, it changes things. So let's think back to my story about me and my daughters. It wasn't my client's fault that my schedule was back to back, nor wasn't it my girl's fault. It was me. So I had to decide, either I'm not going to talk to clients after I pick up the girls, or I'm going to pick up the girls, pay for aftercare or find someone else to pick them up so that I can be completely off from work. Or I was going to find a buffer time in between, that's something that was going to give me space between when I finished work and when I picked up the girls. So for me, I'm going to give you an example of what I've done. I decided that my 2 main days of serving clients, and I've been doing this for years now, I know at least 10 years, I see clients and serve clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are client days. Those are also the only days, if I work late, that I'm going to work late, Tuesdays and Thursdays. There are a few exceptions in between, but mostly Tuesdays and Thursdays. That way my mind knows, my body knows, and my schedule knows, hey, these are late days. On those days, I prepare dinner early. I already map out what me and the girls are going to eat. We know that it's not going to be a long movie night or game night or anything like that. My family knows. Now that my husband and I are married, he understands, hey, honey, I got a coaching call on Thursday night. It's going to last from this time to this time. I need you to watch the kids. And then guess what I do, y'all? I make time throughout my day to make dinner because I value having dinner and making sure that they don't eat Chick-fil-A every single day. I value that. It's important to me. And so I make time for it. And so the time between my coaching call, the girls coming home, and dinner being made, I walk away from my computer. I don't book myself all the way up until the coaching call. I actually step away. I move. I give myself the space I need. It might be for me making a good cup of coffee, walking around the kitchen, making a funny video, dancing with the girls. Or this is something we do as a family. Or really my husband and I, my daughter, she just comes along for the ride. We put a game show on and we watch the game show for about an hour. So I can decompress, I can hang out with them and laugh, and I do that right before it's time for me to go into my last session of the day. So realize that you can control and you can establish the rhythm of your life. The second thing I want you to realize is that rushing contributes to stress, anxiety, depression, and burnout. Rushing, hurrying from one thing to the next. It contributes to stress, anxiety, depression, and burnout. Why do I say that? I think sometimes we don't realize it. And when we don't acknowledge that our inability or unwillingness to take control of our life, to establish clear boundaries with our life, actually contributes to the deterioration of our health, physically and mentally, when we don't realize that, we just do it. It becomes a way of life. It becomes just like the Peterson article states, that burnout is not a one-time place that we visit. It has become our way of life. And I want you to stop and realize that burnout doesn't have to be your way of life. But if you choose it to be your way of life, there are consequences. And oftentimes it's very difficult to reverse them. The last thing I want you to realize is this, that it is possible for you to re-enter your life, for you to ease into the next thing at a pace of grace. It is literally possible. And what that will require, though, is that you're in tune to what you need. You're in tune to what would be the rhythm that works well for you, that you're in tune to what does my body need. In our last episode, I asked you that. I said, hey, what do you need right now? And I want to reiterate that as you get ready to ease into the new year. We don't have to rush. Ease into the next season. Ease into the rest of life. Ease into a new normal or your previous normal. As you ease into it, embrace the path of ease. Know that it is possible for you. It is okay for you. And it is the best thing for you. So what does that look like? What does it look like for you to ease into your next? Not rush, not run, not, I got to hustle into this next thing. But what does it look like for you to ease into it? Think through that. What would that look like? Take a moment now while you're listening to this podcast and think through, what would easing into your next look like? What would easing into your next feel like? Y'all ready for this question? I love this one. And what would easing into your next make possible for you? If you chose the path of ease, to ease into it, what would that make possible? For me, when I ease into the next, I'm more creative. When I ease into the next, I can see and appreciate my family. I can see and appreciate my clients. I can hear. I love that when I ease into my coaching sessions or ease into the next client call and not rush, I can offer a space where I'm fully present for them to serve them at the best possible capacity that I have in the moment, instead of losing the first 10 minutes trying to get myself together. What's possible when you ease into your next? So as we wrap this episode up, I want to reiterate that you can have the grace to re-enter by choosing not to rush. We talked about several things in this episode. Rewind it and listen for the definitions. I talked about what margin was. I actually cited an article that states that burnout is not a place we visit, but it's once you go there, people live there. Like it becomes a lifestyle for them. And then I reminded you that you had a choice. You can choose to do something different. You can choose the rhythm of your life. And in choosing the rhythm of your life, you can build in time for you to go from one thing to the next. You don't have to fill up all the space in your life. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you are not ambitious. It doesn't mean that you're settling. It means that you honor your humanity and you honor what you need and you honor your capacity. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I pray it was fruitful and helpful. If it was, drop me a note wherever you're listening to this. And actually, I have a resource for you. If you go to mysignificantlife.org/life plan, I believe it is, mysignificantlife.org/life plan. I'm making this up. I hope it is. mysignificantlife.org/life plan. Then you will learn my counterintuitive but very thought-provoking process for creating a plan for your life that you actually stick to. And it actually helps you to honor the rhythm of your life. So head over to mysignificantlife.org/life plan and grab that free resource. It's an audio and a workbook, and you'll love it. Thanks. Bye for now.